Hello, everyone, and welcome back to This Day in History. And tonight we're getting back in the swing of things where I add context and relevance to the topics we're discussing. And tonight, all of the topics are links of one chain together, in my opinion. So we're going to discuss them. And we're going to get back in the game after a couple of days of kind of being sluggish on the videos. We're getting back in the swing of things. So, this day in history, January 16th. And on this day in 1919, the 18th Amendment to the United States Constitution was ratified and became the law of the land. And what this law did, this amendment to the Constitution, was it prohibited the manufacture, sale, or transporting intoxicating liquors for beverage purposes. By the late 19th century, groups that had advocated this at a state level had become a powerful political force in the country, and they wanted to take it from a state level to a total national abstinence. 9 months after ratification, Congress, over a presidential veto, passed the Volstead Act. And what the Volstead Act did was it provided for enforcement of prohibition, including the creation of a special unit inside the Treasury Department. And law enforcement staged a vigorous fight against these groups that were running alcohol and intoxicating liquors underground. But they failed. And organized crime flourished. And in 1933, the 21st Amendment to the Constitution was passed and ratified and repealed prohibition. It's the only constitutional amendment thus far that has been repealed. So, once you get a constitutional amendment, it is very rare to repeal it because we've only done it once. All right. Now, some births that occurred on this day. In 1947, in Brooklyn, New York, Dr. Laura Schlesinger was born. And Dr. Laura is a radio host. And she hosted, still hosts today on satellite radio, but in the early 90s to the 2000s, she was one of the top rated hosts in the nation, talk radio hosts. There was Rush Limbaugh. After a while, there was Sean Hannity, and then there was Dr. Laura. I mean, she was big stuff. And she hosted a show that was basically a Dear Abby, but she was Dear Abby with attitude and conservative family values. Had some very controversial views on marriage and the role wives should play in a marriage. Although, you would be surprised to learn that Dr. Laura's doctoral degree, her PhD, is not in psychology. It is in physiology. Now, she did later obtain a marriage counseling certificate from Southern Cal. Her doctoral degree is in physiology, and it was her doctoral dissertation was on studying the effects of insulin on lab rats. In her last year on terrestrial radio, Dr. Laura was rated as high as number 5 nationally. And she is now heard exclusively on Sirius XM satellite radio. Some deaths that occurred on this day. In 1968, at age 84, Bob Jones Sr. died. Full name, Robert Davis Reynolds Jones. the founder of Bob Jones University in South Carolina. Bob Jones University is a very controversial university. It's a Christian university and has created controversy in the past because of some of its policies. It is a fundamentalist school, and it has courted controversy in the past. It is a it holds some controversial views. Now, Jones was a segregationist, and in the 1960s, he declared that God had been the author of segregation, and opposition to segregation was opposition to God. And Jones would obviously die in the 60s. Bob Jones would go on to be integrated 6 years after his death. There's often controversy in the state of South Carolina with Bob Jones University. And it really flared up in the 2000 election in the primary when candidate George W. Bush spoke during the school's chapel hour. It caused controversy because the school's anti-Catholic, and yeah, it was also a thing. But it has withdrawn from politics for a while. In 2007 it did, but in 2015 it did again. It stepped back into it, and it reemerged as a campaign stop for Republicans. Ben Carson and Ted Cruz held large on-campus rallies. So, yeah, still controversial all these years later. Still haven't learned. So there is the This Day in History. I have been thinking about how we're going to I'm going to cover impeachment in these videos, because that is living history at the moment. And how I'm going to do it is I'm going to do a weekly wrap-up video each week of impeachment once the trial starts next week. So we will have all of the coverage of the Senate next week, and then on Friday I will post a wrap-up video in addition to This Day in History, talking about what happened. I am going to post my Iowa caucus prediction video on the day before the Iowa caucuses. So it will be on a Sunday that video goes up. It will be let me get my calendar out here. I'm sorry, I've got to get my calendar. Live by the calendar. So it'll be February 2nd. The caucuses are on February 3rd. I'll put it up on the 2nd. The same thing for the New Hampshire primary. The day before the primary, my video goes up. So that's how it's going to work. And on Super Tuesday. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, on the Super Tuesday video, I'm going to tell you how I predict it's going to go. But before that, I'm going to say, in the interest of full disclosure, this is who I'm casting a ballot for. So you'll know up front if my view's tainted or not. You can judge for yourself. I don't believe it will be, but we'll go from there. Thank you, everybody. Hit that subscribe button, the bell notification icon, and tell a friend. I'll see you all tomorrow. Goodbye, everybody.